Hello and welcome to the House College Sports Show. I am Joe. With me is Kyle, as always, here to talk about some college football. We've had a couple weeks of bowl action going on so far. We're going to recap some bowl action. We're going to pick a lot of the bigger games going on during this bowl season. Kyle, how you doing?
A little under the weather this week, but the good news is we got a lot of college football bowl games on this week, so plenty of time to spend my days.
Oh, absolutely. This is the best time of year with all the bowl games going on, and especially the bigger ones coming up. We kind of did a small preview of week one, recap of week one last week, and we're going to recap week two now. Kyle, I think we left off on Tuesday, December 20th, because we recorded early last week. We had Eastern Michigan beating San Jose State. 41-27 wasn't much of a game. San Jose State scored late to kind of make it look closer than it was. Shaven Cordero, the San Jose State quarterback, 366 yards and 3 touchdowns with their passing offense. But Eastern Michigan gets the job done. They get the potato fry bath for Chris Creighton, the head coach. And Kyle, I'm going to say it. I don't really get why Chris Creighton hasn't been named for a lot more coaching openings. The job he's done at Eastern Michigan is one of the best in the country over the last several years.
Yeah, and I thought this was another good performance to cap off a really nice season, like you said. They go down pretty quick. I mean, it was a 2-score deficit right away. But like you said, they regroup, they get themselves together, and they come out firing. I believe they rattled off, 20, 30 something in a row. I mean, they really dominated after that opening sequence and the opening 10 minutes, I guess. And so good job by Eastern Michigan, and you're onto something there with maybe we can start looking to see his name in some coaching talks, coaching rumors. Maybe even this offseason, but certainly in the near future.
Absolutely. Wouldn't be surprised. Just a program with not the biggest budget, with a lot of, I'd say, lackluster history. And he turned them into something that's, making bowl games at a somewhat consistent level at Eastern Michigan is just not easy. Next game up, we have the Liberty Flames and Toledo Rockets in the roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl. Toledo wins this one 21-19. DeQuan Finn, we mentioned him in the preview of this game, had a passing touchdown. He also had a rushing touchdown in this game. Kyle, we talked about Liberty maybe not being the same team this year as they were in the past, which made that Arkansas game so, I guess, I don't want to say shocking, but so, I don't know. It made it seem a little bit more questionable for Arkansas to lose that game. This offense is not very good this year, at least in terms of what they had last year. Toledo took advantage of that. They didn't let Liberty score in the second or third quarter. They made their comeback, and they got the big win. That's a good win for the Rockets.
Well, anytime you hold an opponent to around 250 yards, you give yourself a pretty good chance to win the game. And I thought the Toledo defense did a really good job in this game. Toledo, it's kind of a dogfight all the way through, and then towards the fourth quarter they take that commanding lead, and there's a little fight from Liberty towards the end. So kudos to them. But and honestly, with all the things that have been going on, like you said, it's kind of a somewhat down Liberty team compared to the years previous, and also they just lose their coach. So I thought that was a lot of good fight from them in this game, but just too much Toledo. Toledo was a really good football team this year, and they win the MAC, they win the bowl game. So overall, just a good effort from them.
Absolutely. We'll move on to Wednesday, December 21st. Western Kentucky beats South Alabama 44-23 in the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl. Now, this was actually a very weird game, Kyle. We talked about this a little bit last week too, but Austin Reed enters the transfer portal, then decides to come back to Western Kentucky. He throws for 497 yards and 4 touchdowns. Just made this game hard to pick because if you don't have Austin Reed, I mean, it just makes it a totally different game. We had Western Kentucky have guys step up, some transfers. Marquis Stepp, the running back, who formerly was at USC, 7 carries for 63 yards, and really just did what Western Kentucky does. They throw the ball around the yard, and it's really hard to keep up with.
Yeah, and that's why I took Western Kentucky in this one because when they said Austin Reed was coming back, that's the glue, that's the bread and butter of their offense, and you could see it here. They get over almost 700 yards of offense, and South Alabama was a very solid team this year. It's just that Western Kentucky offense really does move well, and did last year with Billy Zappi, and this year, of course, with Austin Reed, and it's just too much from them. And I'm always shocked that they don't have more wins, just with how sometimes in any way when you watch this team and the offense just seemingly can't be stopped. It's impressive to watch, but I thought it was a good showing for sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing to note for next year too is, I mean, Austin Reed in year 2 in this system at Western Kentucky, watch out. I mean, they could be a team that it seemed like he got more comfortable as the season went on with them, especially as proof with this bowl game with 497 yards. this might be a team to watch out for as like maybe a New Year's Six team who can crash New Year's Six bowls next year. On Thursday, December 22nd, Air Force beats Baylor 30-15. They get that rushing attack going. Brad Roberts has 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's been one of the nation's leading rushers. Really helps Air Force get this win. I think on the flip side there for Baylor, this offense has not been good all year long. Blake Shapen was more of a pocket passer than Gary Bohannon, who was the starter last year, but he's been kind of off this year, and that's really cost Baylor. We had them as possible Big 12 title contenders, or at least maybe the second or third best team in the Big 12. But it's really hard to see how things went so wrong this year for the Bears.
Is Baylor one of the teams that Dez had in his Final Four?
It is.
I thought it might have been. So Baylor and Texas A&M. He's got to lay off the Texas schools next year. But this was the really, really cold game, and I think that probably factors in a little bit. I mean, Shapen throws under 50%, but also credit to Air Force. They hold him to 1.6 a carry on the ground. They just did not let the offense do anything all day. And when you're a rush first team and you can get that going well enough anyway, that helps you and benefits you in the cold as well. And I think Air Force just, even from the jump, they really took control of this game and did not let go. So.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. Very patriotic. The Air Force gets a win here. Very happy for that. But
shame on you for going against
I know.
Our fighting men and women.
Hey, I mentioned that I loved being them in NCAA football video games in the past because their playbook was so cool and their uniforms are cool and the stadium's cool. But I don't know. I gotta start going with my heart more than my head. My head's dumb. Yes. My heart's not dumb at all. On Friday, December 23rd, Kyle, we had the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl, and this was one that I was sitting there like after the first quarter, I was like, okay, this doesn't look good for Houston. I picked the wrong team. One team wants to be here, and it's Louisiana, but they ended up coming back and they won 23-16. Clayton Tune, 224 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Houston's had a little bit of an up and down year in terms of what their expectations were, but I really did think after the second quarter, I was like, okay, what's going on here in Houston? Did I pick the wrong team? Because it just didn't seem like they were really in it until like the second and third quarter.
And that's kind of how they've been all year. I mean, you mentioned that. It's just kind of been like, what are we going to get from Houston today? And even in games where they go down, they have some wild comebacks. And I think they needed every little bit from Clayton Tune in this game, and he gave it to them. And so that's the reason they win. But this wasn't a very strong Louisiana team. We talked about that as well, where it's a really down year, new coach, new system, of course, and it's just kind of somebody you think you can get on top of. And it was a very slow start, but kudos to them to bring it back around. And they did a really good job in the second half making adjustments. So.
Yes, sir. They get the win there. Houston, Dana Holgerson getting ready for the Big 12 in the coming years. We'll see how that holds up. And Louisiana, good program. It just wasn't their best year in the recent memory, as they usually, one of those teams who has 8, 9, 10 wins sometimes. In the Union Home Mortgage Gasparillo Bowl, Wake Forest beats Missouri 27-17. This game was a lot of good offense by Wake Forest. I mean, Sam Hartman, 280 yards, 3 touchdowns. A.T. Perry, who's a guy for NFL draft people to know, just a big target. He had 11 catches for 116 yards. And Kyle, they get the win, and I don't think the fight for Missouri was quite there that maybe we expected to see like they've had in previous games, like when they played Georgia close. But one thing that did come out of this game is Sam Hartman is now in the transfer portal, so this was his last game with Wake Forest.
Yeah, that came out today, I guess, right? It's kind of a bummer because Wake Forest has been somewhat relevant, and I enjoy that in college football. I mean, they were very relevant last year, obviously, and I thought they were pretty relevant this year, despite the end of the season coming short and everything. But Sam Hartman was a big part of that, and I thought that was kind of fun to have Wake Forest kind of as a contender in the ACC, and I think that's a big loss for them. Obviously, I don't know how you come back from that, but. I personally, I like Missouri's fight in this game. I thought that they hung around way more than I had expected. I believe I probably had them at about a 10-point loss, but I mean, even going into the second half, I thought that was a pretty close game, and they come out they come out of the second half, they score and they take the lead, and I just didn't think that they'd be involved in the game this late. And credit to them because they were missing most of that defense, I mean, that defense was really what made things move. I thought Brady Cook did a fabulous job. The numbers don't really show it, but he was under duress all day, and I thought he kind of figured that out pretty well. And with his legs as well. And credit, somewhat credit to them. It was, they're short man, and I thought they put up a good fight, but just too much Wake Forest. Like we said, that offense still moves really well, and Sam Hartman had a great game. So, good job to Wake Forest, and maybe we'll see what happens next year with Missouri. You know, they keep sitting at that 6-6 mark. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's exactly how I would describe it for Missouri. Just I don't know. We'll see what happens with them. But Wake Forest, I think, is now like one of the more entertaining storylines of the offseason. Like whether they end up getting Sam Hartman back, we see some of these guys just go in the portal to try to get a better deal. Maybe he does that. But now you go from a team that last year had a very good season, this year had a pretty good season, to maybe trending downwards if they don't get some answers to these questions, which is losing a guy who was a Heisman contender, never really like put himself in the conversation as like a finalist, but a guy that people had on watch list for like a Heisman contender at the start of the year. You lose that, and you might slip back down to what Wake Forest is more known as, which is 5-7 most years. On Christmas Eve, we have the Easy Post Hawaii Bowl, and this one was one of the more fun ones. I know a lot of people weren't able to necessarily watch this one because of family gatherings and all that, and maybe some NFL games going on as well. Middle Tennessee wins 25-23 over San Diego State. San Diego State took a 14-0 lead after the first quarter. Middle Tennessee bounces back and comes back in the second quarter with 13 of their own points. And in the second half, they were able to just outlast San Diego State. I think the big factor in this game, Kyle, for me was Jalen Maiden, the quarterback for San Diego State, throws 3 interceptions. That's just really hard to overcome in a bowl game. And that's, for San Diego State, whose identity has been defense and more running the football, you throw 3 interceptions, that's just never going to end well for you.
No, and those 2 of those interceptions came late, correct? Mm-hmm. Or at least in the second half, which is when Mid Tennessee kind of took control of the game, and because they come out really fast and everything. I didn't get a chance to watch this one, but just kind of looking at the box score and everything, a lot of fight from Mid Tennessee State. I believe I took them based on my heart. So once again, Joe, you got to trust your heart. You just got to trust your gut and go Blue Raiders on that one. I was a little surprised by this result, despite pulling for them.
I was too. They just I kind of try to gauge how many bowl eligible teams beat, and Middle Tennessee didn't really get that chance to win as many games against bowl eligible teams. And I was whatever. Next year I'm just going with my heart. You don't know who's going to buy into bowl games. You don't know who's going to opt into bowl games.
You never really know what you're going to get.
I love it. I just I need to start picking all the teams I like, all the players I like. We'll see what happens. On Monday, December 26th, we had New Mexico State beating Bowling Green 24-13 or 24-19. Excuse me. These were 2 6-6 teams entering the game. New Mexico State, I personally thought, Kyle, that I thought they did a good job in this game because they did not have as many good wins either, kind of like Middle Tennessee. But they get off to a hot start. Matt McDonald, the Bowling Green quarterback, gets hurt, and that really kind of hampers their offense until very late in the game. They score 19 points all in the second half. Bowling Green scores 19 points all in the second half, trying to play comeback. But New Mexico State gets off to a hot start, and sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah, and you have to wonder how much that injury, factored in, because that offense looked so lost for pretty much 3 quarters of this game. They moved a little bit in the third quarter, and then the big special teams play really gets things moving finally for what had been a very slow, boring game for Bowling Green. But I do want to say absolute kudos to New Mexico State. This is like a Kansas-level job that Jerry Kill did. This is a team that's had 2 winning seasons this millennia. They're also, this group of 5, so it's different than Power 5 in Kansas. This arguably is the hardest job in college football. And in year 1, Jerry Kill brings them to a bowl game. Are you kidding me? Their second bowl game ever, I guess 4th bowl game, if you want to go way back to the 50s or 60s. I guess their all-time record's 4-1 or something, but or 4-0-1, because that's right. They're the one team that's never lost a bowl game.
There you go.
Or something with at least 1 appearance or something. So just an absolute. I am so impressed with the job that he's done. And some of even beating a Liberty team that was unfocused just to get bowl eligibility. I thought was very impressive. That's just a very, very tough place to win at. So
we talk about bowl season maybe not meaning as much as it did in the past, but for some of these programs like New Mexico State, these games make a whole hell of a lot. And I'm with you. You talk about worst jobs out there. It's definitely down there in terms of one of the worst. You're in New Mexico. It's not really a recruiting bed. It's also very far from a lot of the good schools in Texas. You have to go all the way across Texas to get to some of the good high schools to recruit, or all the way to California, which you're recruiting against all the other schools up there. You're independent, so you kind of don't have your schedule. It's a very bad spot to be in, much like UConn is, at least scheduling wise. It's tough, man. It really is. So that's no history to go off of either. It's never really been good historically, other than their bowl record. So Jerry Keel's done a great job, and I hate to see independent teams in college football, and that goes for even like Notre Dame. But if you can win at a school that is independent, it usually means good things. All right, the next one up, which is actually today when we're recording, which is Tuesday. Buffalo beats Georgia Southern 23-21. Buffalo kind of had this one pretty much at hand for most of the game. Georgia Southern tried to make a comeback, but they honestly really weren't trying that hard in the end. They were letting too much clock go off. They weren't really rushing to the line at all. It was very odd at their comeback attempt, especially for a team that likes to air the ball out a little bit. Kyle Van Treese for Georgia Southern, 352 yards, 2 touchdowns. Just couldn't get the job done against his former team. It was the Kyle Van Treese revenge game, but Buffalo got revenge on him for leaving the program this offseason.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch this one, so I don't really have much to say about it. But your recap, of course, helps. But just the transfer from Buffalo to Georgia Southern just feels weird, unless it's like a location type deal. But yeah. Buffalo gets the last word. Yeah, good for them.
Yeah, it was a weird game. Again, I don't know. It's weird. We're gonna get more of these situations with the transfer portal going on. But what are the chances you transfer from Buffalo to Georgia Southern and you have to play all your old teammates and all this? That's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
We'll recap this one because it looks like it's pretty much over. But we have the Surf Pro First Responder Bowl. Never say anything. Never say never in bowl season. But Memphis is up 24-3 on Utah State. We talked about Memphis maybe not having the season they really hoped for, Kyle, but they were doing okay in this game. We thought Calvin Tyler, the running back for Utah State, wouldn't play, but he is playing. I don't know when that announcement came, but I thought he declared for the draft and was opting out. But even so, even with them, they've scored 3 points, and the third quarter is almost over. Memphis is about to get a good win because, I mean, again, this just wasn't the season that they usually have at 6-6. But getting to 7-6, maybe they can build off that for next year.
Yeah, exactly like you said. We said that last week. We expected Memphis to win, but we did acknowledge the fact that it could be a close game. I mean, Memphis isn't the same Memphis of years past. And from the looks of the game today, there's really nothing happening on the ground. This is all Seth Hennigan. So, like you said, something to build upon for next season. They're maybe favorites in the American next season. I mean, who's the favorite now with those 4 teams leaving?
It's a good question.
Or 3 teams, BYU, I forget. But, I mean, UCF, Houston, maybe SMU. Probably SMU.
Yeah.
SMU, ECU. Well, Tulane.
Michael Pratt just announced he announced in a press conference last week that he's coming back. So maybe Tulane again.
Tulane definitely the favorites. And then probably Memphis and SMU, I think. I mean, unless ECU's expected to be good again. I don't know.
It's hard to keep up with these days because we don't know who actually has eligibility left. So it's always tough.
Yeah, and you're also not sure who's going to hit the portal or who they're going to get. I mean, you really don't know much until, June. I mean,
yeah. I'm with you. They're a team to watch out for next year. It's hard to predict what's going to happen until, honestly, until more players figure out where they're going in the portal. There's still a lot of names out there, and I don't know. It's an okay season for them, but maybe they can build off the fact that the Americans getting a little bit weaker next year. All right, we'll go to our picks for this week of bowl season, Kyle. We'll start it off with Thursday, December 29th, because we've picked all the games up to that point. And we'll start it off with the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. We have Syracuse and Minnesota in this game. Minnesota favored by 10 points.
And I like Minnesota in this one. I mean, the line's there for a reason. But the biggest story, of course, is the running back for Syracuse being out. Sean Taylor, I believe his name is. And he hasn't had the most gaudy of numbers, but I really do think he's been a big part of the offense for Syracuse. And just always keeps him moving, and it really hurts him. I think the guy behind him has maybe 26 carries on the season, so not a lot of experience coming in to replace him. And I really like Minnesota in this one. Love Ibrahim. He's been one of my favorite people to watch. He's had another huge year. So I got the Gophers for sure.
I do as well. I mean, that spread's pretty big for a bowl game. I think it's gotten worse, but you're right. Sean Tucker has been one of the.
Sean Tucker.
Wait, so you said? I think you said Sean Taylor. I think pretty sure.
I said Sean Taylor. I was like, that. I know that's not right, but that's what's come to mind.
That's close. But he's a good draft prospect and everything. He's going to opt out. The running backs usually opt out. Besides Mo Ibrahim, apparently. Minnesota, I'm very impressed still with the job that PJ Fleck has done year in and year out for the last several years. Yes, you get Mo Ibrahim back from that injury. And you have some guys who've returned, like Tanner Morgan was their starting quarterback at least at the start of the year. But this is a program that again just doesn't have a lot of history, and he's built up. I'll ride with him. I think they're building a good culture, and again, I think he is a candidate to maybe leave for a bigger job in the coming years too. I don't know exactly why he hasn't left yet, but he's getting 8 wins again out of Minnesota after a couple of years of getting like the 11-win season back 2-3 years ago. This is a really good job. I'm taking Minnesota to win. Syracuse, they had that hot start. They really faltered on the stretch, didn't they? I think they won one of their last 6 games to be 7-5. They almost went 6 wins and then 6 losses, which would have been incredible.
Yeah, they went 6-0, right? I mean, they were ranked in the top 20. Big things happening, and finally reality hit.
That's it. That's how it goes.
Those basketball schools did not last long, did they?
No, it was a hot start. We had Duke, UNC, Kansas, Syracuse, Kentucky.
Kentucky to an extent, yeah.
We had all UConn. I guess this year, UConn finished strong. We'll give it to them.
Yeah, throw them in there. What the hell? I mean, they finished strong though. Yeah, they did it the other way.
True. Let's move on to a battle of teams that have some history here. We have Oklahoma and Florida State in the Cheez-It Bowl. Florida State favored by 9.5 points. They're 9-3. Oklahoma 6-6. This one is looking like one of the ones where a lot of people are going to pick Florida State. Kyle.
Yeah, and this is another big spread. I think Florida State wins by more than Minnesota beats Syracuse. I definitely think Florida State has this too much Jordan Travis, too much in that backfield. They got a 300 monster back there that's led with Trey Benson. I just think I've been big on Florida State, probably about since halfway through the season. I've just been very impressed with what they've done. And we've seen Oklahoma. I know they've had some injury issues, but they just haven't been it. And I definitely think Florida State takes care of business.
Yeah, with opt-outs and everything, Oklahoma's actually a good deal weaker than they have been this year, which is alarming because they haven't been good this year. So I'm going Florida State. Like you, I've been very impressed with them all year. They're one of the teams that I might be irrationally high on next year because I've liked what I've seen. They only have 3 losses this season. It all came in that tough stretch that we mentioned. It was NC State, Clemson, and Wake Forest back-to-back, I believe. I think they're really in a good position with Mike Norvell and some of the players they're bringing in too, and Jordan Travis back at quarterback. I mean, this could be ACC champion Florida State next year, possible playoff Florida State, depending on how things shake out. Maybe that's too high, but I really like what they're doing.
I think they'll definitely contend for the ACC, like no question.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll be a playoff team, but
I mean, like you said, we can't really predict too much at this point, like even relative to years past, because we just don't know what the rosters look like, the portal and everything. But in terms of returning talent and like what they did this season added together, I mean, it's fair to say that they could improve, and if they improve from 9-3, they won't be too far off. We'll see what that ends up being, though. The Alamo Bowl, we have Texas and Washington. Texas is favored by 3 points in this one, Kyle, and they won 8-4 this year. They kind of maybe had some ups and downs. Washington with Michael Penix, Heisman favorite for next year possibly. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll quite be in the Heisman. We'll see. Like you said, I thought he had a really good season. I just don't know if he has enough of that it factor. But I think he's going to be good enough in this game. I know Washington isn't favored. That kind of surprises me because Texas has a buttload of opt-outs, and I think that will kind of hurt them. I thought this would be a great game, even fully healthy on both sides, but with all the opt-outs from Texas, I kind of give the lean to Washington here. I really like what Michael Penix has done. I thought Washington had a great season. I wasn't too sure on them. They got that benefit bunny from Michigan State who ended up being very bad, but they really took care of business in the Pac-12. I know they got to dodge USC, but they beat some good teams in there too. Oregon State, I believe, the 2 big wins, and those are very impressive wins. And I think Washington's got enough to get the job done.
I do too. I don't understand this line either. Texas has those opt-outs. We mentioned that some of these bowl games don't mean anything to these schools. Like Texas does not care about being in this game. The opt-outs kind of prove that. I mean, the history of Texas in bowl games that maybe aren't New Year's Six bowls or national championships kind of prove that. Washington, this does mean a lot. This is a team that's coming back from having some bad years after Chris Peterson left and getting back to it. It matters to Michael Penix. He's back for next year. Washington should get the win here. And honestly, again, like next year, Caleb Williams will be the definite favorite for Heisman. That's how it works. If you win it one year, that's just what happens. But Penix, I think, has a really good chance. 4,300 yards passing, 29 touchdowns. Just dicing it up in the Pac-12. I think almost if you're at one of these schools that doesn't get a lot of media attention, you need to have one good year and then a great year. Maybe you can do it next year. I don't know. All right, we'll move on to Friday, December 30th. We have, starting things off, we have Maryland and NC State. NC State favored by 3 points in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Sorry.
The best bowl of the year, let's be honest. This one's a little bit of a coin flip. There's tons of opt-outs on both sides, so who really knows what you're going to get. I like Maryland. I think ultimately, we keep watching NC State, and I really haven't liked what we've seen from them all throughout the season. Specifically offensively, of course. That last win was a really good win. That's the other confusing thing, is they had some really good wins later in the season. It's just they lost too many bunnies. They really should have lost to East Carolina to start the season, and that's before you could blame it on any injuries. So I just wasn't too impressed with NC State, and I thought Maryland showed some good fight, particularly in some of the big games against Michigan for one. And I like Taulia Tagovailoa. I know he's going to be without some receivers and whatnot, but he can make things happen, and I like Maryland in this one.
Yeah, Maryland is going to be without some of these NFL draft receivers in this game. That does concern me a little bit, but I'm with you. I haven't seen anything from NC State this year from the backup quarterbacks. They got the win against North Carolina, but I mean, North Carolina's defense is so bad. I don't really. It's a good win. It's a good win, but I don't I don't hold it in high esteem. I hold it in pretty good esteem.
We were already kind of jumping off the UNC bandwagon at that point, so it was a fine win, but it wasn't anything we were too crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I know their offensive coordinator is now the head coach at Coastal Carolina, and maybe some new offensive coordinator opens things up a little bit. But now that you don't have Devin Leary, I don't know if it matters. So I'm going to go with Taulia. Maryland's had a pretty good season. I think their over-under for the year was 5.5 wins. They get to 7 wins in a tough Big Ten East. Good for them. Lots of good things for their future possibly, too. I think Loxley's doing a really good job for Maryland. All right, next one up we have the Sun Bowl, Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, Pittsburgh and UCLA. UCLA favored by 6 points.
Yeah, and I like that line. I want to stay with UCLA. They were kind of my team at the beginning of the year, so I'm not jumping them off just yet. And I just wasn't really too impressed with Pittsburgh either. I'm shocked they even got to 8 wins, but I think too much UCLA. Charbonnet, DTR. I think they all go out with a bang. They're going to be mostly healthy from the last that I saw. And as far as opt-outs as well, that's what healthy means now, I guess. So I'm going to take UCLA. I think they probably even cover, but Bruins.
Yeah, I'm going UCLA. I'm going big too. Pittsburgh has some opt-outs. UCLA, like a lot of their key players, are actually playing in this game. The running attack is going to be good. Pittsburgh's without their starting quarterback, Keaton Slovis, who started the whole year. I really think that offense is going to struggle. I'll go UCLA big. And Kyle, like we're saying with all these opt-outs and all these injuries and everything that we don't even know if guys are playing, it's time that college football has injury reports. I think I said this last week too, but it's time. I can't keep up. I mean, Calvin Tyler played today, and we thought he was an opt-out when we made the picks last week. I have no idea what's going to happen, but it's just – I wish that we had some injury reports that, like, at least the Wednesday of the day of the game, you say, hey, these guys are questionable, these guys are whatever, and yeah, that's what I'm wishing for.
Oh, agreed 100%.
Well, we'll hope to get that passed in the coming years. We'll see if that happens. We'll see if maybe
we'll work on it.
I think honestly, gambling's going to make that happen more than anything. We would just make it more fair and make it so people know, but we'll see. The TaxSlayer Gator Bowl, Notre Dame and South Carolina in this one. Notre Dame favored by 2. They'll be without Drew Pine, who started most of the games at quarterback, but they might be getting back Tyler Buckner, who was injured and thought to be out for the year, but might be coming back for the bowl game.
Yeah, and this is going to be one of those gut checks here. I'm going to go with South Carolina. I'm going with my heart here. 2 big wins at the end of the season, and really did the college football world some favors with those wins. And I just think that the good vibes keep going. I like Spencer Rattler. I thought he got better as the season ended, not necessarily as the season went on, but as the season ended, I thought he showed a little more maturity and a little more better poise with the ball, and he got 2 big wins for his program. And there's one more. I just feel like they're very focused, and I think South Carolina's going to be able to get the dub.
I have South Carolina as well. I am not very high on this Notre Dame team, especially when you take into account who is opting out, who has transferred. It is not the best situation. I mean, Tyler Buckner will be playing. He wasn't looking that good early in the year before he got hurt. He'll be playing in his first game since week 2 or week 3. I don't think that's a good situation. Drew Pine was not the most talented quarterback, but he was doing okay. You have your best offensive player by far, Michael Mayer, has opted out for this game. He's obviously one of the best tight ends in the country, if not the best tight end in the country. You have Isaiah Foskey on the defensive end, who's opting out for this game, preparing for the draft, possible first-round pick. It was a good season after how things started for Notre Dame, but this really feels like a specific bowl game that is not going to go their way. I'll go South Carolina, like you said, their big wins at the end of last year, and I do think Notre Dame. This is a game where you don't really care about in terms of Notre Dame's history and everything. Come back next year with maybe a transfer portal quarterback or something like that, and they could be very successful, but not their game, not today. Ohio and Wyoming play in the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl. Ohio is favored by 1.5 points.
And I want Ohio in this one, too. Wyoming is without a lot of offensive weapons, particularly in the running game. And Ohio, obviously, offense wasn't very good against Toledo. That was my bad. I should not have picked them in that one. But that's part of the, going with a new quarterback in game one with not a lot of time to prepare. I think they've had a month and a half to prepare now this time. And I like their chances a little better to just have a more ready system and a offense, hopefully anyway, against Wyoming in this one.
I'm going to Wyoming. I really like their defense. I think that's going to be the difference here. Wyoming does have severe running back issues. Their top 4 guys. They have 2 guys in the transfer portal, 2 guys who are injured. It's going to be interesting to see what they do, but that defense is really good. We have, as mentioned, Ohio's quarterback Curtis Rourke is out for the year. He was the highest graded quarterback by PFF. Don't think their backup will be able to get the job done against this defense. I'm going with the defense. I'm going with Wyoming. I think the Cowboys get it done. We'll start it off with the New Year's Six Bowls now, Kyle. Capital One Orange Bowl, Tennessee and Clemson. Tennessee 10-2, Clemson 11-2. Clemson favored by 4.5 in the orangest Orange Bowl of all time.
Yeah, the orange team's definitely going to win. That line surprises me. I think I like Tennessee in this one. I just haven't seen enough from Clemson throughout the year to keep up with a Tennessee offense that's probably going to be firing pretty quickly. Despite not having Hendon Hooker, I know that's kind of been my thing, is that Hendon Hooker, the offense runs through him, blah, blah, blah. But I still think they'll be capable of keeping up and still at least getting some kind of semblance of that offense back. And Clemson's without, obviously he didn't factor in that final game as much, but he's out there without DJ as well. And so you just kind of wonder how that might factor in. And I just think Tennessee is going to be too much. That's high tempo offense for Clemson.
Yeah, I'm going to go Clemson. I think the opt-outs are too much for Tennessee in this one. You talk about pretty much their big offensive players. Hendon Hooker's out, Jalen Hyatt's out, Cedric Tillman's going to be opting out for this one too. Joe Milton is not quite the quarterback Hendon Hooker is. We saw that kind of limited Tennessee last year at the start of the year too. I think that really does have a huge impact on the game. For Clemson, they got Cade Klubnik starting. He's been great in the ACC championship. This is his first start, and I don't know. I think he's going to be able to get the job done. He has a month to prepare for this game. Tennessee's defense has its holes, as we've talked about throughout the whole year. Clemson has some opt-outs, but there's some guys playing, like Brian Brzee, the defensive lineman, is going to be a first-round pick. He hasn't opted out quite yet, I don't think. So I think that defense really steps up. I think Tennessee is a team to watch out for next year, too, once they get some recruits in, specifically at quarterback. But I think Clemson can win this one. On to Saturday, December 31st, we have Iowa and Kentucky. Iowa is favored by 2 points in the Music City Bowl. Kyle, this will be one of the. I think if you like college football, watching dumb games where stupid things happen, this is going to be it, because Iowa's down to a third-string quarterback, Kentucky's down to their second-string quarterback. There's opt-outs, there's transfer portal guys. Iowa's favored by 2. I could see this going either way. It's going to be an absolute shit show, and I can't wait.
Is it official, the third string? I saw it might be the fourth string.
It might be the fourth string for Iowa.
I heard that both of them were going to play a little bit or something like that, or potentially the fourth string because he's a freshman. I don't know. I think I'm going to go with Kentucky, just because, I don't know. I think I flipped and it was heads, so heads was Kentucky. So I think Kentucky wins in a 5-2 win, something like that.
Oh,
like a baseball score.
Yeah, I'm going to Kentucky too. There's the offense has been concerning when Levis is in. It was even more concerning when he was out. That's all fixed now because my guy Devin Leary will be at Kentucky next year. Very excited about that. But I think there's enough talent on that defense to kind of hang with it. And make some plays, maybe special teams play, at a punt return or something, kick return with Berrien and Brown might be maybe something to watch out for in this game. But I'll go Kentucky. It's a coin flip. I'll go Kentucky. I'll go with my heart here, Kyle. I mean, Iowa's offense is so bad that even with a backup quarterback, Kentucky still is a step ahead of them. Iowa should, and historically it shouldn't matter who the quarterback is at Iowa. They can just run the ball, and I don't think that's the case anymore. I'm going Kentucky.
Yeah, jokes aside, Kentucky's defense, I think, is better. They don't have any real opt-outs or injury issues there. And despite that, yes, they won't have a running back. Will Levis will be out, blah, blah, blah. They still have playmakers, and the wide receivers are still mostly there. And I believe the tight end is also a freshman, right? So he's not opting out or anything. So there's still playmakers and ball players on the Kentucky side. I just think they're going to be able to get this one.
I would agree. I will go to the Sugar Bowl, Alabama and Kansas State. Alabama favored by 6.5. This line is moved because Bryce Young has said he's going to play. Will Anderson said he's going to play. There's a couple guys in the transfer portal for Alabama, but at the end of the day, most of the guys are playing for Alabama.
This one is tough. I think I want to go with Kansas State anyway, just one last time, just because it's been such a fun team. And they've had fight all year and everything. I think that the big win, obviously, to win the Big 12. You and I love Deuce Vaughn. I think I want to stick with them one last time. And we've seen a lot from Alabama this year. We've seen a lot of struggles. They've struggled with teams that weren't as good in the Big 12 as Kansas State, obviously, in Texas. And so I think I'm going to go with the Wildcats here. But boy, what an upset it would be.
I'm going Kansas State. I'm doing it. I said screw. I was going to take it when I didn't think Bryce Young was going to play Will Anderson. I decided to stick with it. Why not? I really do think that Alabama's depth is going to be very limited by the transfer portal guys. There's wide receivers left and right in the transfer portal, offensive linemen as well. So I think that could play a factor. But we've seen this Kansas State offense, whether Will Howard or Adrian Martinez can go. I really like obviously Deuce Vaughn. Malik Knowles, a wide receiver. I think Phillip Brooks is another receiver. And I also think they have some of the guys to match up defensively, too. I mean, they have edge rusher Felix Anudike Uzama, who's going to be a pretty early pick in the draft. They have Julius Brents, who's a 6'4" corner. They have, NFL guys on this team, and I don't think people, realize that. Deuce Vaughn is going to be playing on Sundays, and he may not be a starter because he's kind of slight, but he's going to be getting a lot of, passing down work in the NFL. There's dudes on this team, so I don't think it's, a pushover game for Alabama whatsoever. So I'm going Kansas State. Screw it. I'll pick the upset. I'll stick with it despite Bryce Young and Will Anderson playing. Should be a fun one. I'm excited for this one. All right, we'll go to the college football playoff semifinal. We'll start it off with the Fiesta Bowl. TCU, Michigan. Michigan favored by 7.5.
Yeah, and I want the Cinderella to keep going, but I think I like Michigan in this one. And the main thing is just the Michigan running backs. I think they're going to be too much for TCU. And just when they get them biting on the run, just like Michigan did against Ohio State, I think they'll go over the top and get some scores that way as well. So, TCU wasn't very good against the run this year. I think they were maybe the bottom half or in the 70 range. So I think it's going to be too much ground game from Michigan.
I do too. I'm going Michigan. I think it's going to be close, maybe closer than that spread even says. I think these are two teams that might be evenly matched. But I do think in the end, the running game is going to do it. I know I've been big on Donovan Edwards, the running back, is better than Blake Corum, who's out for this game. I think it's going to show. I think in these next couple of games, it already did show in Ohio State game, in the Big Ten Conference Championship game, it kind of showed. But this is a really good team. Edwards was a former highly touted recruit. He'll be really good, and I think just TCU has had some games, obviously we've seen, where they play up and down to the competition. They let teams hang around. They let teams get the lead. I don't think you can do that against Michigan when they have that running game. All right, the other college football playoff semifinal, Ohio State and Georgia in the Peach Bowl, virtual home game for Georgia. Georgia favored by 6.5.
I'm going with the gut again. I'm going with Ohio State. I just think it's a little better of a matchup for them. They're really good against the run. That's what Georgia kind of prides on, and you're going to need Stetson Bennett to really pick apart the defense. Ohio State does struggle against the pass a little bit, but I don't think Stetson Bennett's going to be good enough to really have that factor in as much. If you look at his best games, it was against teams that were lacking in the secondary for sure. And I think Ohio State will have it shored up enough, a little more than Michigan anyway. And I'm going with the Bucks. I can't not go with the Bucks.
I know, man. I thought about it. I'm going Georgia. It'll probably be something I'm wrong again about, but this is one where I think that game against Michigan really tainted it for me. that not only did Ohio State not look good in the secondary, and they looked like they beat themselves, but they didn't make any adjustments to the game plan overall. It doesn't seem like in the second half defensively. Hopefully they get that corrected. I mean, talent-wise, these two teams are right there with each other. But I'll go Georgia to win. I think it'll be really close, maybe by a touchdown. The thing that mostly concerns me, Kyle, to be honest, is, I mean, the defense is whatever. I mean, I get what they were trying to do against Michigan, make J.J. McCarthy beat you, and maybe it works against Stetson Bennett. But the offense was so timid against Michigan. It was so many bubble screens, so many stupid plays. If you have a guy like C.J. Stroud at quarterback and you're not letting him throw the ball downfield, I don't know what we're doing. So if Ryan Day fixes that, I 100% agree with you. They can win this game. But if they do the stupid shit they did against Michigan, where they just do bubble screens and have them throw 2-yard patterns all the time, no, that's not going to work. Let them throw the ball downfield to the best receiver in college football, Marvin Harrison Jr., and see what happens. Moving on to Monday, January 2nd, we have the ReliaQuest Bowl, Mississippi State and Illinois. Mississippi State favored by 1 point.
I'm taking Mississippi State for sure. I just think everything going around the program, this is going to be a very prideful game for them. They're going to want to win this for Coach, and I just don't see. Did I see correctly? Did Illinois' running back opt out as well?
I believe he did, yeah.
I think that's a big factor, too, because they're definitely a run-first offense. Yes, they pass a lot more than the old days for Burt Bielema, but Mississippi State, I just think they're going to get it done. They're going to get one final win for old Coach there. They're playing in the Pirate Ship Stadium and everything. It's got Mississippi State written all over it.
Oh, boy. I'm going Illinois.
You're a horrible person.
I know. Love Mike Leach. Like I said, read all his books. Big fan. But something about Brett Bielema just getting to bowl games and usually winning them, especially if they're not big bowl games, just sits with me here. They do have Chase Brown, the running back, out. They do have Devin Witherspoon, corner, who's going to go very highly in the NFL draft, out for this one. But to be honest, it's a lot to deal with. I'll tell you what, if I had a coach pass away like that, I don't know how I would react. I don't know how these kids are going to react, and I'll be pulling for Mississippi State. I won't lie. I'm going to be cheering for them. I've always cheered for Mike Leach teams when they're not playing my teams. But it's a whole. This is something we just haven't experienced before, and I don't know. It's a weird time. Next one up, we have Tulane and USC. This is the Cotton Bowl. Tulane got in as the Group of 5 representative for the New Year's Six. USC is favored by 2 points, Kyle.
Oh, I'm going with Tulane, baby. This is a heart and a brain decision on this one. I've loved them all year. Tajay Spears, Michael Pratt. I love that offense. I love their defense. And I'm taking a page out of your book on this one as well. I don't think the Southern Cal defense is up for the task.
Oh boy. Well, then I don't know what I'm thinking, because I got USC. I got USC big. I don't know. I think Caleb Williams is going to play, and I think his hamstring injury. He's adamant that he's going to play. I don't know if they're going to clear him or whatever, but it's been a month since he suffered the injury. I think he'll be fine. Jordan Addison's opting out, but they still got Tuli Tuipulotu on the defensive line, who's I think is playing in this game. They got a lot of guys who I think are NFL dudes, and Caleb Williams. I think the start for maybe winning back-to-back Heisman starts here. Maybe have a good game, show off in this game, but I don't know. I just don't think the Tulane offense can keep up on this one. They will specifically be stacking the box to stop Tajay Spears. Michael Pratt will have to beat them. I'm not saying he can't beat them, but to be able to keep up with Caleb Williams, I think is a little too much. And for me, the guy who hated on USC for the last 3 weeks of the regular season and the Pac-12 championship, that's big for me to pick them. So I don't know.
Well, that's just because you didn't want them in the playoff. That you can get over it now. You can take them now. So
I don't know. I was picking against them for decent teams.
Every week at the end of the year.
Part of it was their schedule, right? UCLA, and then they had Notre Dame, and then they had Utah, right? So I picked against them in the last 3 weeks, and I think it was because of defense and running games those teams had. But, that's all right. Tulane could do it. I hope they do. Again, cheering for them, pulling for them, picking USC.
How do we pick the first 6-7 games on the same side, and now we can't agree on?
Well, if we don't agree on this next one, then one of us is going to have to I don't know. Figure something out here, because it's LSU and Purdue and Citrus Bowl. LSU favored by 14.5 points. If we don't agree on this one, then God save us. I don't know.
I'm going LSU. There's just so many opt-outs, kind of on both sides, honestly. and injuries as well. But LSU at the end of the day has so much more talent. I'm going LSU. Purdue's without coach too, so
Yeah, LSU. I'm going big. I think they can cover that big spread. They have some opt-outs. So it's a significant amount of opt-outs, and even they're still coming in as we speak, honestly, because Mekhi Gardner, I think, just opted out yesterday or today or something like that. But they have more talent on their roster. They've recruited better, and with Purdue's opt-outs, it means more, right? Like Aiden O'Connell's out. Charlie Jones, who came out of nowhere at wide receiver this year, he opted out. Payne Durham, their tight end, opted out. It does. Corey Trice, like an NFL corner who's going to be picked in the mid-rounds, like he opted out. That means a whole lot more than LSU's opt-outs. I'm going LSU big. All right, the last one we'll pick tonight, the Rose Bowl. We have Penn State and Utah. Both teams had 10 wins this year. Utah favored by 2.5 points. This is going to be capping off bowl season before the national championship game.
And I've got Utah. I think they were so close last year, and Ohio State just kind of snags it from them. And I also I know they're 10-2, but I just wasn't really impressed with Penn State this year. I mean, they didn't really beat anybody. They showed some fight against Ohio State. I mean, we're right in it towards the very end. But they got dog walked against Michigan, and I didn't like a lot of what I saw from Penn State this year. And I think Utah, I did like a lot what I saw from them. Cam Rising, everybody. I like Utah.
I did too. I think Utah wins the game. Cam Rising's been good. They do have some opt-outs, but I think they can overcome them. Like one of them's running back, Tavian Thomas, will be out for this game. He got injured too. That's part of it. But they got other guys who can run the ball. And Dalton Kincaid, the tight end, is opting out. They have other tight ends. They've always had multiple tight ends. So it's almost at places, like the opt-outs are places that won't hurt them as much. Penn State, I'm with you. They've done exactly what you expected them to do. They've done everything that's just okay. They never surprised me. They never didn't surprise me. 10-2, their 2 losses, Ohio State, Michigan. That's kind of where they should be. If any team met expectations this year, it's Penn State. This is a program that has a lot of young talent, though. This is a game where I think they're going to try to go use his experience for next year when they got guys like Nicholas Singleton, running back, who's a freshman this year. They have Drew Allar, who's coming in next year, quarterback. He might see some time in this game with Sean Clifford, maybe not being the best, I'll put it that way. But they're I know,
Easy.
but they're gonna be a team to watch out for next year. I think maybe they can pull off an upset of maybe Ohio State or Michigan. Maybe it's just this is not their year. Utah has had a great season. They can do it again in this Rose Bowl. All right, Kyle, those are our picks for the week. Any final thoughts?
I do not believe so. No.
All right. So just to finish up the Memphis game, they're up 31-10 with 7.5 minutes left. We're going to count that as a Memphis win right now. Again, just last plea here, because I see Calvin Tyler has 78 yards while we're recording. Just give us injury reports. Give us opt-outs. Like, say you have to do it. Like, I don't know. Just say if you want to play in the bowl game, you have a week to decide after conference championships, and then if you're out, you're out. If you're in, you're in. I don't know. That's what I got to say.
Yeah, that would also just help other teams prepare and everything too. Like, why is there not a date that you can set to figure out? You have a 7-day window. Either you're playing or you're not.
I don't know, man. I don't know. There needs to be more. There needs to be more restrictions and rules on a lot of different things. College football, maybe transfer portal, what day it happens, and all that type of stuff. It would be really nice.
Yeah, because you can still transfer in the summer. I mean, it's outrageous. There's a day it opens, but there's really no day it ends. Really,
well,
I mean. As long as you can get enrolled, I mean,
this year that this is open and then it closes and then it reopens in spring practice, the transfer portal, which means
So we do have windows
and I'm
now.
just at the end of the day, it's good that they have windows, but it doesn't really.
Because I was to say we got our starting center a couple years ago, in August, I think. It was Jesus,
yeah,
okay.
Well, we definitely need more rules in place to fix that because it's gotten to be crazy and maybe spread out this off-season schedule for college football. So hey, maybe I know coaches get fired and hired when they can't really control that, but maybe transfer portal day and early signing day aren't right next to each other. Maybe they're different days. We kind of extended. I know it's tough with the semesters, so maybe transfer portals have to be done in December, but maybe we have early signing day. Maybe we just push it back to later. We don't do the early signing day anymore. We just push it back to February where it can kind of fill some off-season content, and I don't know. It seems like all college football is December, and then we have a huge gap until spring games. And there's stuff going on. I'm not going to be one of those guys who says there's no off season, because there is. There's tons of time where we're just what's going on next? We're just waiting for recruits to commit, or we're waiting for spring reports or whatever,
an early signing day really has lost its luster. I mean, it's not nearly as impactful. It's not as exciting. I mean, honestly, I feel like we're just doing it like you said because that's how we used to do it. But I think it'd be a lot more beneficial to be later in the season because we still got a whole lot of guys that are not opting out, that are entering the transfer portal after their bowl games or whenever. And so you're signing guys out of high school, not realizing, oh shoot, this guy's available. This guy's available. Like maybe we should have saved some roster spots or whatever it is. And there's really just no reason to have the kids, on early signing day. Just do later signing day. I don't think you need two so much anymore.
Well, that's going to help the players more than anything too. Like you get those freshmen who can be like, oh, well, they got 3 transfer receivers. I'm a receiver. I'm going to go to a different school so I can play. And maybe it does become something that helps the smaller schools recruit too. Like that can help even the playing field a little bit because if they don't see a path to the field the first year, I mean, what are we seeing? Some of these guys who go to Alabama in the first year, they transfer out. All these wide receivers at Alabama who are transferring now, they transfer out because they're not going to play. They could have just started where they started, then transferred to TCU like JoJo Earl did or whatever, and they'll be fine. Like, I don't know. It makes things a lot more sense. The other thing, did you see that the one thing that did come out of early signing day, did you see the defensive back who was committed to Notre Dame, flipped to Oregon, and then the next day flipped to Oklahoma?
He's playing for everybody.
Hey, maybe someone maybe he's getting some money from all the schools. Good, more power to him if you can swindle some of these boosters out of it. But he said his mom wanted him to go anywhere but Oklahoma.
I was about to say, my guess are the mom and dad are heavily involved in this one.
I get it, man. You're that age. You got to make a decision for yourself. Maybe for the first decision for yourself, your whole life. Maybe at least big decision for your whole life and. You want to listen to your parents, but you got some freedom, and hey, I mean, maybe he works out at Oklahoma. Well, it's been one of those. Who was the guy? Who was signed on with Alabama, but his mom wanted to go to LSU because he was from New Orleans? It wasn't Fournette, but it was some. I forget who it was.
I can't remember. Yeah,
but it was at the Under Armour All-American game. But yeah, you can see the parents have a big factor in this. That's why they say like most of the coaches recruit the moms of the players more than anything. So. And the dads. The dads are the ones asking for more money. The dads are the ones asking for more money, and the coaches have to talk to the moms and say, we're going to take care of your son and all this stuff that, may or may not happen. So.
And sometimes the mom and dads don't even talk, so, it's all over the place.
All right, well, that's my long-winded final thought. This is my turn to remind everyone to like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. We're going to recap all these bowl games next week, and then we will, including the playoff, and then we'll preview the national championship game next week and see who we got going in the national championship. For reference, Kyle, you had Ohio State and Michigan. You're going.
Oh yeah, baby! I want it to be Ohio State TCU, but I think Michigan's going to win.
I want what you said to happen, because
that would be insane.
Here's what I'm saying. If I'm going for my rooting interest, I'll say Ohio State TCU is what I want. If I'm going for, I want to see what the heck happens if these teams go. I want to see Ohio State Michigan. If we get the 2 best teams all year, it's going to be Georgia Michigan, obviously. But lots of different possibilities there.
Hey, TCU,
baby.
How dare you?
All right, that wraps it up for us. Thanks for listening. We'll see everyone next week.